Good evening, everyone. My name is Benjamin, and today I want to talk a little bit about redistricting. And specifically, I want to talk a little bit about Virginia. Now, I haven't done the state senate or the House of Delegate maps because honestly, that's just not worth the effort and energy it would take to actually redistrict those, to actually draw those maps. Unless I was being paid for them, and unfortunately, like I said, I don't think I got on the Virginia redistricting board. I think I would know by now if I did. uh, but we're gonna talk about kind of what I would think would be a fair map, and this is the first one I drew, which was to try and minimize county splits and keep various regions together, if that makes sense. There's a few weird there's a few things that are, in my opinion, a bit weird. For example, this little spit right here that kind of separates Richmond, or that kind of separates this part of this county. But if Virginia didn't have independent cities, this would look a lot better. By the way, before we get too far into it, a like, a comment, and a subscription would genuinely help, and I would greatly appreciate it. Um, and of course, a subscription on my Patreon would also be greatly appreciated. Now, one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put well, I can't really do that. Now, can I? But notice how you really can't tell where the district lines are. Instead of going through the counties and seeing, various district lines, but take them off and let's zoom in on, say, Roanoke, an area that I'm actually surprisingly familiar with. Put the county line up, you'll notice that the district line actually goes around Roanoke. And part of this is because if I included Roanoke in the 9th Congressional District, it would actually have way too much population. I wouldn't be able to extend to this part of the Blue Ridge, which is a lot more similar to the New River Valley over here, as well as the Appalachian Plateau in this area, as well as the really high areas. And speaking of that, Virginia's highest point is somewhere in this area, Mount Rogers, right there. This is the highest point in Virginia is right in this area. Fun fact. And I actually plan on hiking at some point, and I think the second or it's one of the it's definitely in the top 10 for highest points on the east side of the Mississippi River, and certainly in the top 10 for highest points in the Appalachians. If we go over here, the Hampton Roads and Newport News area, as well as most of Portsmouth and Norfolk, which is in this area. Yeah, Portsmouth and Norfolk are kind of in this. Basically, they're the same area. That's a separate district, including Posaquan. I almost said Posaquan. It's Poquoson, and of course, I put Virginia Beach, Suffolk, and Chesapeake all together because, to me, these areas are a little bit more. Even though Virginia Beach is a higher population area than Portsmouth and Newport News and Hampton Roads, most people and generally the cultures are very different between Virginia Beach and the Newport News, Portsmouth, Hampton Roads area, right in this little section. So it does actually make sense to separate those districts from a geographic, cultural, and political standpoint. And I'm saying political in the way that it's geopolitical rather than purely politics related, as in partisanship or anything like that. Especially because Virginia Beach is becoming a little bit less of a Republican stronghold. It's actually a fairly competitive area. But, fun fact, Virginia Beach is the highest population city in Virginia. Anyway, so the Eastern Shore can't really be a district all on its own. Currently, it's actually in the 2nd Congressional District. And I definitely think it is very wrong to separate the Eastern Shore, Virginia's portion of the Delmarva Peninsula. So I've actually included that with the 1st Congressional District to allow Virginia Beach to be mostly this area rather than stretching up to include the Eastern Shore and parts of, well, this area near Williamsburg, York County. I even think it includes Jamestown. It's really strange how they justified the decision. By the way, the original Jamestown is in this area. Fun fact. And I've been there. It's pretty cool. And of course it extends through Kilmarnock and Tappahannock and Warsaw. There's Gloucester. And there's of course Williamsburg. I tried to keep all of Williamsburg in the same district, but I think I accidentally had to include a little bit, which is a little unfortunate, but it happens. And then we go over here, and I wanted to include all of Richmond in the same congressional district, and that wound up being the new 4th, which includes the eastern part of Southside. By the way, here's the Great Dismal Swamp for those who are wondering. And it is a pretty low population area, but it is a little less low population than it used to be. It used to be basically completely uninhabited. And there's a lot of really cool history about the Great Dismal Swamp, but I'm going to talk about that when we get to the antebellum period on my political history of the United States series, because it fits a little bit more in that area. And as you can see, I kind of broke up Southside into 2 separate congressional districts, and you can tell that the line is seamless here. And I did put all of Henrico County, or Henrico, but all of Henrico County into the 1st Congressional District. Again, I wanted to minimize some county splits where possible. The 5th Congressional District is basically all of Southside, and I think all of Lynchburg. If I put the county line up, yeah, I've got all of Lynchburg into the 5th. We've also got all of Roanoke in the 5th as well, and that's basically Southside. We've gotten Tidewater finished, and we've gotten Southside finished. Then we move over to the Blue Ridge Mountains, the Appalachian Plateau, and the 9th Congressional District, the district that I live in, and I would still live in under this redistricting plan. And it includes Salem and Bristol, with a few other notable locations, including Blacksburg, home of Virginia Tech. Covington is actually a fairly decent-sized town. And then, of course, you've got Tazewell, Richlands, and a few other places. Abingdon is kind of a notable place. Gate City. And there's actually a rather unfortunately named place right here. Yeah, that's a rather unfortunate place name. Anyway, so moving on to the Shenandoah District, otherwise known as the 6th Congressional District, which includes Charlottesville, the Shenandoah National Park, Harrisonburg, Stanton. By the way, that is pronounced correctly. It is Stanton, not Staunton. It's Stanton. And it also includes Winchester, And there's a few other places, Woodstock, and actually, if I remember correctly, there's a really small town up here. I think I went a little bit too far. Yeah. It's a little town somewhere. There it is. Basie. Basie. And actually, I've been there. It's really cool. There's a ski resort there, and I accidentally broke my thumb skiing. Yeah, it happens. All right, so now we go to the 7th, which is it's kind of that no man's land district. It's the one that doesn't fit neatly into a geographic area. For example, 1 and 2, you could say, are mostly tidewater. 3 is also tidewater. 1, 2, and 3 are definitely tidewater districts. 4 and 5 are south side. The mountains are 6 and 9. The problem, and of course, 8, 10, and 11 are Nova. 7 stretches from the outskirts of Richmond all the way to Nova, and it's the one that unfortunately is unavoidable. No matter what you do to Virginia, unless you're completely ignoring any sort of geographic and political boundaries, you're going to have one district like this. And I've tried, and I've tried, and I've tried. You're going to have a district like this. And you've got some notable places: Fredericksburg, Spotsylvania Courthouse, Culpeper. That's actually kind of it, because it avoids Charlottesville, and it avoids Richmond and Henrico County, so the only notable towns are Fredericksburg and Culpeper. So if we go over to Nova and zoom in on that, you have the Nova districts. The 8th, which is the very, very heavily urbanized part, including Alexandria, McLean, and most of the D.C. suburbs, including Ronald Reagan right here. You've got Falls Church, as well as, I think I included City of Fairfax City. Yeah, I put Fairfax City in this district as well. Tyson's Corner and Annandale right here is the major places. If we go to the 10th, this is Loudoun County, as well as Reston is probably the biggest area in the 10th, and Dulles is also pretty big. You've got Centerville and Chantilly. You've got the Great Falls of the Potomac in this district. And that's pretty much it, unless you really want to include Leesburg. And actually, Harper's Ferry is... Technically, Harper's Ferry is in West Virginia, but there's but that actually used to be part of Virginia. So there's a little bit of a historical park in this area, both on the Maryland, West Virginia, and Virginia sides. And then if we go to the 11th, you've got Springfield, Fort Belvoir, or Fort Belvoir for us Americans, Potomac Mills, Manassas, and Manassas Park, and basically Fairfax County, and Woodlawn as well. And there's another airport, except this is, I think, actually technically, yeah, I was about to say, this is actually on Fort Belvoir. And Mason Neck is completely, well, Mason Neck is actually a state park. I was about to say it's in Fort Belvoir, but that's not quite true. But that's the first way to do it, which is to focus on geopolitical boundaries as well as geography and the geographic regions, right? And here it is. And just to show you the partisan lean, this is with the composite, and with the most Democratic map, which is Senator 2018. This was Tim Kaine beating out Corey Stewart. You only get 3 districts. Now, this is based off of the data sets we have, right? The most Republican-leaning one was president in 2016, and that's what you get. Honestly, Senator 2014 should be included, but okay. Seriously, if they can get President 2008, they should be able to get Senator 2014. But yeah, it's a not uncompetitive map. It really is. You've got 3 competitive districts which can flip the state. So, in my opinion, I think that's a fair redistricting, and this is what I would actually err on the side of. There's a few things I would probably clean up, maybe put straighten this out a touch, and make this border a little bit cleaner between the 1st and the 7th, and maybe see if I can find a way to make the 4th and the 3rd and the 1st fit a little bit better. But other than that, I really don't think there's much improvement you can make on this one from a fairness perspective, or from a, geopolitical and keeping regions and geography together. So there's that, and I'm going to do the exact same thing, except what I did with this map was I tried to focus on creating as many competitive districts as I could. Now, the problem with Virginia is it's actually really difficult to do that. For example, no matter what you do, unless you make the map as ugly as possible, you're never going to get this area to be in a competitive district. Which is funny, because the 9th Congressional District of Virginia actually used to be one of the most competitive districts in the country. It used to be known as the Fighting 9th. But there's also a little bit of an interesting, pleasing geographic matchup here. That said, there's also some issues. And I'll explain this. So, if I remember correctly, this data set is Senator 2018. Yeah. So, if we take this and put it on the most Republican, all of a sudden you get that 6-5 Republican-Democratic split. So that shows that, yeah, these districts are actually competitive. Now I'll explain kind of the reasons how I drew this and why I genuinely believe that. And if we do look at the composite, the composite is actually a little bit too favorable to the Republicans, in my opinion. Definitely all 3 of these districts are competitive, and you can make an argument for these 3 as well. But I'm gonna actually leave it here. Okay, so let's take this off and kind of explain the reasoning. So the Eastern Shore is relatively evenly split. It would be competitive if it was its own district, but it would lean towards the Democrats. Throw in Virginia Beach and Chesapeake, as well as part of the Great Dismal Swamp, and this little part of Tidewater, Virginia, and you actually have a recipe for a really competitive district. It would, 10 years ago, this would be extremely favorable to the Republicans, this district. for example, if I had included 2010, if they had the 2010 data set, yeah, it would have been extremely favorable to the Republicans. But anyway, this district, of course, this is never going to be a competitive district, the third, just because it includes Hampton Roads, Newport News, Portsmouth, Norfolk. You're never going to get a competitive race out of that district. This is mostly south side with a little bit of Tidewater thrown in. And this is also a very competitive district because if we go up here, it extends towards Richmond. But because it includes some of these blue areas of Tidewater, kind of in here, Franklin, Emporia, and some of these areas, Petersburg, Hopewell, and there's one other, Colonial Heights. It's actually a pretty competitive district. The first is also competitive because it includes all of Henrico County and these hinterlands up here in the very upper part of Virginia's section of Chesapeake Bay. The seventh, that's never going to be competitive because you've got Richmond, very little countryside, and then you've got a little bit of northern Virginia. The 8th and the 11th, never going to be competitive. 10th could in a very strong wave year because it includes enough of, I forget which county this is, but it's the one surrounding Winchester. And this actually is vaguely reminiscent in terms of the shape of the district of the old 10th. The old 10th actually dances, and the current 10th kind of dances around Reston. Then we go to the 6th, which is Stanton, Culpeper, Shenandoah National Park, but it doesn't quite cover all of the Shenandoah, nor this northern part of this part of the Appalachians, and I believe these are actually the Alleghenies, but it also extends all the way to Nova to make it more competitive, including covering part of Manassas in Prince William County. Then we go over to here, and to try and make this district a little bit more competitive, we include Martinsville, Danville, both of which are Democratic-leaning cities, Lynchburg, which it used to be a Republican-leaning city, but now it's not. Fun fact, this district would have Appomattox Courthouse, which anybody who's a history fan knows what Appomattox is famous for. And then, of course, it's got Charlottesville and Albemarle County. And then, of course, the 9th is, well, the 9th. And this time, as an attempt to try and make it competitive, I tried to include as much of Roanoke as I could. But the fact of the matter is, the rest of the state is just too. The rest of the 9th Congressional District is just too Republican-leaning. It's never going to. I don't like this plan. I don't like this map because it's a little too ugly, and you could actually argue that it is a map that is designed to favor the Republicans because Virginia is a much more Democratic-leaning state than it used to be. It used to definitely be, at least at the first half of this decade, a swing state, a true swing state. Unfortunately now, because Nova and Richmond, and to a lesser extent Portsmouth and the Hampton Roads area, control the politics of the state because they have grown so dramatically, especially Northern Virginia. The state is definitely far more likely to go to a Democrat than a Republican. And this map, which is designed to be as competitive as possible, in my opinion, falls short of meeting it's not aesthetically pleasing. It would very likely be challenged and go to court. I just don't think this is a good plan. Now, one of the things I tried to do with both of these maps was keep the districts in their historical seating. Basically, the second was supposed to be in this area, the first in this, the third here, fourth generally over here, the fifth generally over here, the sixth in the Shenandoah, the ninth in the Blue Ridge, the seventh kind of in that no man's land, and the 8th, 10th, and 11th in Northern Virginia. And as you can see, that's in both of them. And I definitely much prefer this map, which is better from a historical and geographic standpoint. I probably could have done a little bit better to follow natural features, but it's a good enough map, and I genuinely like it. So, anyway, I'm going to end it there. Hope you all enjoyed. Take it easy. Have a very nice evening. Bye-bye.